I learned a long time ago when you're anxious, you let everybody in the room know you're anxious. I also learned that the opposite of love is hate. And that's not true, it's fear. You see, hate is simply fear in disguise. Now, my favorite definition of love is understanding without judgment. I've actually got it tattooed right here on my arm. We fear what we don't understand, and to feel safe and secure, we make a judgment about it. In that fear, that's what's dividing us. That's what's dividing our country and our world. Every cell in my body believes that the only way through this, if we're going to survive, is we have to start understanding one another from a deep, conscious level. And that's not easy because judgment's baked in. We all judge. It's a survival technique. But there's a workaround. There's a hack. It's not my hack. I learned it a long time ago. When I can understand why I think, feel, and behave the way I do, I am much more equipped to understand you. And the unintended consequence of understanding is peace. So today I'm going to take you on a journey. I'm going to tell you 3 stories. One about love, one about fear, and one about understanding that led to peace. About 20 years ago, I was slowly coming out of a pretty long and destructive battle with alcoholism. I was about 2.5 years sober, was recently divorced, and I had 2 little boys. And I'd gotten kind of familiar with a woman at work. Her name is Yana, and Yana and I had a few things in common. We shared a birthday. We'd also both gone through a divorce. And so one day I work up the courage to come to Yana and ask her out on a date. And I go into her office and I say, "Hey, Yana, got to go to the hardware store. Do you need anything?" I totally blow it. And without skipping a beat, she looks at me and she goes, "Yes, I need a hair drain strainer for my shower drain." And I'm like, man, this woman sucks at flirting. Just like me, this actually might work. And it did. I got the right strainer. She ended up going out with me on the night of our birthday. And at the beginning of that date, I found myself getting increasingly more anxious. I hadn't been on a date in like 15 years. I hadn't hung out with a woman in like 2.5. My brain attacked me. I started having these thoughts like, man, I really want to order the Shirley Temple, but I don't want to tell her I'm an alcoholic. And how does this whole eye contact thing work? Is it the right eye I look in or the left eye or both? I was overwhelmed. And I'd known enough about myself to know one thing. Don't listen to that voice. Even though it's there trying to protect me, it has no idea what it's doing. So I got vulnerable. I told her about my history with addiction and where it had taken me. I didn't give her all the gory details, but I did give her enough information that she could see the real me. And what she did, she talked about growing up with an alcoholic father. She talked about the painful divorce that she had went through. She showed me that my transparency allowed her to be real. And in that moment, I understood the power of authentic, vulnerable communication. Now, after some connection, we did what any other Gen Xers would do. We went parking, of course, right? We kissed a little bit. We looked over the city lights. And for a moment, I'm ashamed to say it, but I had this thought, am I going to get lucky? Is she going to ask me back to her place? We couldn't go back to my place. I was in my early 30s. I just moved back in with my parents. I wasn't going to get that vulnerable. And it was as if she read my thoughts because she looked me square in the eye. She put my face in her hands and she said, "Sean, I really like you, but you are not coming home with me tonight." That's the moment I fell in love with my wife, Yana. When we're real, it leads to meaningful connection, meaningful relationships. And at its core, that's what emotional intelligence does. It's the power to create understanding with self so we can have authentic connection with others. Now, 20 years before that night, that's a different story. At 15, on the outside, I looked like this happy-go-lucky kid, but on the inside, it was this constant battle of I'm not good enough, people don't like me, I don't belong. None of that was true, but I lived in this constant state of fear. And the hardest part is I didn't have any language for it. I couldn't name it as anxiety and shame, and it controlled me. But this was the mid-'80s. We didn't talk about stuff like that, so I just buried it. Little side note, a lot of us have some behaviors that we do that might not be super healthy that help us avoid uncomfortable emotions. Eating too much, shopping too much, doom scrolling on TikTok, right? But for me, at 16, I found alcohol. And when I drank, my anxiety and my shame went away. And it worked for about 10 years until it stopped working. I started to neglect my responsibilities. As I got older, I lost jobs. My first marriage started to suffer. And the hardest part for me was that I couldn't be real with people. I couldn't show them how terrified I was inside. I couldn't give them the real me. And the hardest part, though, was with my two boys. They'd look at me and they'd say, "Daddy, please don't drink." And I drank anyway. Not because I didn't love them, but because I was incapable of managing this tidal wave of emotional energy inside of me. That energy just stripped them from me again and again. My last day drinking, I was slumped on a public bus. I was drunk, broke, alone. The seat I was sitting in was wet, and it smelled like urine, and it wasn't my urine. And I just sat there. Remember having this thought of, well, this is it, Sean. This is who you are now. Not just hopeless, not just helpless, but erased. Disconnected from everyone you love. Lack of authenticity leads to disconnection. When we avoid our emotions because we don't understand them, it leads to disconnection with our peace. We get no peace. We have no peace. We lose it. And without peace internally, peace with you is impossible. Now, where one story ends, another one begins, and by the grace of God, I actually sobered up and had a rational thought. What if your feelings, Sean, are here for a reason? What if they're trying to tell you something and you're just not listening? And there's a novel idea, right? Well, I actually took some professional help. I became very vulnerable. I practiced this thing called radical acceptance, and my life changed pretty quickly. The first thing I had to realize is I could no longer drink. If I wanted a new path forward, I had to let go of the old solution that was no longer serving me. When I did that, I quickly realized I wasn't crazy. Those thoughts of I'm not good enough, I don't belong, those just ended up being stories I told myself as a kid. They weren't real, but my silence allowed them to grow and feel real over time. That understanding, when I learned that my childhood actually influenced my adult reactions, that changed my perspective. I decided I am going to study my past and my present experiences so I could understand myself better, so I could have a more peaceful future. I became aware of what I was feeling, why I was feeling it, and when I'd felt it before. So I could see patterns of how my beliefs shape my emotions, how my emotions influence my behaviors. I quickly realized that this internal chaotic world was just spilling out onto all of you and all of my relationships. I learned emotional self-regulation skills like breath work and movement and meditation. But the most important thing I learned was to take full responsibility for my emotions. No more blaming, right? When I stopped making everybody else responsible for what I felt and how I behaved, something changed inside of me. I became more confident. I was able to set healthier boundaries with people. I could apologize when I'd made a mistake. I could communicate with more authenticity. I learned to give myself grace. And then I could extend that to all of you. Seeing you as I'd learned to see myself. An imperfect human who was raised by other imperfect humans, doing the best I can with what I have. And that shifted everything in me. My relationships changed, my family grew stronger, and I found peace within myself for the first time. That's the power of emotional intelligence. It creates understanding with self so peace can grow inside, so peace can eventually flow outside. And today, I'm married to my best friend, Yana. I ask her to sit in the front to keep me safe. I don't believe we have the hair drain strainer anymore, but I'm pretty sure I get to go to the hotel room with her tonight. And our boys, Parker and Peyton, they've grown up into two men with a depth of emotional intelligence that humbles me. And our daughter, Paulina, she's never seen me drunk. At 16, that young lady has more emotional intelligence and more compassion than I believe I will ever gain in this lifetime. But I want to be clear to all of you, I am not standing up here on this red dot telling you I am perfect. I am not. I stumble. At the end, ask her. The difference is today I have the tools, and when I remember to get the hell out of my own way and use those tools, they change everything. When we understand and regulate and communicate our emotions in an authentic way, our relationship with ourselves and others grows stronger. But to do that, we must know who we are. And to do that, we have to understand where we've come from, not to blame, not to create villains, not to create victims, but to understand the childhood environment we adapted to. Pia Mellody, in her book, Facing Codependency, talks about how our current sense of reality, how we're all viewing this reality right now, was shaped by what we saw, heard, and experienced in childhood. So if that's true and our childhood shaped us, how do we reshape ourselves as adults? Well, there's a book called Emotional Intelligence. It's actually written by a gentleman by the name of Daniel Goleman. Mr. Goleman says if we learn 4 foundational skills of emotional intelligence, we can reconnect with ourselves and then reconnect with others. Those skills are emotional awareness, regulation, communication, and empathy. And then finally, there is scientific evidence that emotional intelligence is important. I've been doing this work for a long time, and every one of my clients that starts working on their relationship with self, they become more peaceful, and then their families and their communities become healthier. And this is how individual peace can actually turn into world peace. So I'm going to challenge each of you. You might not like this. Sorry, I'm a therapist. I do a lot of things people don't like. Go home tonight and identify one behavior that you know you do that might be a little unhealthy that helps you avoid uncomfortable emotions. Identify one limiting belief you have about yourself or the world around you. Find somebody in your area that can help you identify where those come from, how to challenge and change them. Because if we can change one belief, if we can change one behavior, we can change anything. Now follow this roadmap. Understand your history. Not to blame, but to really deeply understand the childhood environment you adapted to. If there's any unresolved trauma, please work on it. It will take time, but you can do it. Become aware of what you feel. Learn how to regulate it in a healthy way. Learn how to communicate it with authenticity. And for goodness sakes, show empathy to others. We are all doing the best we can with what we have. And when each of us does this, when each of us heals our own relationship with self, we become part of a wave, an emotionally intelligent wave that sends a ripple effect outwards. One interaction, one family, one community at a time. And that's how world peace is created. It is not created in boardrooms. It sure as heck isn't created in governments. And I'm confident it's not going to be created on TikTok. It's created right here within each of us. If we want a more peaceful world, we must first learn to become more peaceful. I am not the first person or the last person to say this, but Gandhi said it so much more eloquently than I could ever when he said, "Be the change you want to see in the world."